I was born on the 5th of October 1896 in Noiretable. My father was a court clerk, and my mother was from Le Puy-en-Velay. My eldest sister Renée was born in 1895. After my parents separated when I was 8 years old, we moved to Étampes, Seine-et-Oise, 50 kilometers from the south of Paris. My father Pierre passed away in 1909 in Madagascar. He was 40 and I was 13 years old. I barely knew him. I was gifted in drawing, and I went to study architecture in Georges Sedan's studio in 1912. A year later, I got into the prestigious École Nationale Supérieure des Beaux-Arts in 1913. In April 1915, at the ripe age of 18, I was accepted to the 86th Infantry Regiment as a private. I became corporal in 1916 and was promoted to sergeant in 1917. I was dismissed from active service in December 1919, and I was too old to be enrolled back in school and had to drop out, crushing my dream of becoming an architecture graduate.
I am Alexandre Léonard. I was born in the center of Paris in November 1890. I began studying architecture in 1908 in the same school that Paul attended, l'École des Beaux-Arts. But I had to stop my studies in order to complete my military service from 1910 to 1913 and later from 1914 to 1918. I served as a soldier in an observation balloon corps. I eventually graduated with an architecture degree in 1919.
Refusing to give up on life, I charged on in search of ways to broaden my horizons. Opportunity knocked in November 1920, when I was hired by the building company Brossard Maupin to work in Tianjin in North China. On January 1921, I was in China, and 6 months into the deployment, I was appointed as the architect in charge of the Shanghai office. Unfortunately, the firm decided to close its Shanghai branch another 6 months later, but they offered me an assignment in Singapore, which I refused. Soon after, I met René Eugène Fanot, a prominent figure in the French colony. He introduced me to René Minuty, who had just founded a building firm with Ledreux, another civil engineer. They would later go on to design several prominent buildings such as the Savoy Apartments, the Huapu Bridge, the French Waterworks, the Picardy Hotel, the building office of Messagerie Maritime in the Bund, and Hengshan Hospital.
After World War I, as it was for Paul, I found very few job opportunities in France. I was already 28 when the war ended, and my only work experience was the time I had served the country as a soldier. When I got back from Algeria in 1913, I met Charles-Édouard Jeanneret before he became known as Le Corbusier, and he introduced me to a Swiss engineer, René Minuty. We kept in touch, and René offered me a job when he opened a branch of his firm in Shanghai. I decided to take a chance in the colonies, so I joined Ledreux and Minuty's firm, where I met Paul around 1921. In addition to my job, I also became a teacher in the Sino-French Technical School in Shanghai.
In January 1922, we decided to open our architecture office, and we registered it at my private address on 180 Rue Porte de l'Ouest. It so happened that the city of Shanghai was booming and money was flooding in, so architecture and construction flourished, which was great for us. We began working for the International Savings Society, ISS, founded by Jean Baudin and René Fanot. As the ISS was draining a large portion of Chinese savings, it became necessary for them to build potential long-term reserves. A significant part of their capital had thus been invested in real estate through the purchase of land and the construction of residential buildings. To this end, René Fanot and his associates, Jean Baudin and Michel Spellman, founded the Foncière et Immobilière de Chine, FONCIM, a property and real estate management company, on December 15, 1920. Working actively with them, we made a significant contribution to the development of Shanghai. Among the constructions we worked on in 1922, Fonsim Residences, Route Cohen, Residence, Route de Sieyès.
In 1922, Ledreux, Minuti & Co., civil engineers and general contractors, was appointed for the commission of the new French sports club. Paul and I were involved in the project as freelancers and had come up with the design for the project. This brought us in conflict with Ledreux and Minuti, who took legal action against us for the intellectual property of the model. We were ultimately declared the rightful owners of the project design.
Among the constructions we worked on in 1923 were 192, 194 and 196 Route de Marigny,
Fonsim Residences, As fate would have it, I met with Marcel Verdier, a fellow soldier I met during the war when he became the head of the urban planning department at the French Municipal Council. This was an excellent guanxi that would bring many contracts to the firm in following years.
As war veterans, we continued to serve our country, and since the formation of the volunteer company of the French concession in 1923, we had participated in all deployments.
Sometime between 1922 and 1923, I met Elisabeth Voroff in Tsingtao. Our daughter Marie-Jeanne Nanette was born on September 17, 1926.
Constructions in 1924. Dwelling lot BC 91 and 194 at 689 Avenue Joffre, Huaihailu. Fonsim Type 1, Route Kaufmann. Fonsim Type 2, Route de Frélu. Fonsim Type 3, Medieval House at Route de Sieyès. Mr. Kruze's residence at 130 Route de Grouchy, Yanqinglu.
Twin houses, Route Vallon.
Banque d'Indochine staff at Route du Père Robert. Monsieur Nouveau's residence at 525 Route Tenant de la Tour.
Swimming Pool, Avenue Hague.
Constructions in 1925. Fonsim Type B villas at 555 and 557 Route de Sieyès. Fonsim residence at 571 Route de Sieyès. Fonsim Type 2, route de Frélu. Cinéma Paris, Orient Réflexion, at 550 avenue Joffre. Bois-Saison's residence at 17 route de Bois-Saison.
Postal Supply Department.
Constructions in 1926. Clinique du Docteur Lambert, 536 rue Bourgeat. Clémence Boarding School, 340 rue Bourgeat. Foyer russe, 197 route du Père Robert. Chakalian Bakery, route de Sieyès. Cercle sportif français, 290 rue du Cardinal Mercier.
Construction of the Cercle Sportif Français, French Sports Club, began in December 1923, and the massive Beaux-Arts style building was opened in January 1926.
I think we started at the Parisian Art Deco trend in Shanghai, with the interior decoration of Cercle Sportif Français.
According to the French magazine L'Illustration, the building, one of the most beautiful, if not the most beautiful of all that the metropolis possesses in the Far East, is a powerful affirmation of French art and taste. No more, no less.
Constructions in 1927. Director of the CFTE, Compagnie Française de Tramway et d'Éclairage Électrique de Shanghai. Residence, 60, rue de Launay. I met Élise Rieuf, a French painter, during a trip to France in 1927, and we married soon after.
As we were not only associates but good friends as well, we built our homes next to each other on Route de Sieyès, 1929 and 1928.
Constructions in 1928. Couvent des Dames du Sacré-Cœur at avenue Joffre. Bois-Saison. Apartments, 26 rue de Bois-Saison. Apartments 610 avenue Joffre. Constructions in 1929. Hôpital Sainte-Marie, extended in 1933 at route du Père Robert. Pavillon d'isolement. Pavillon des Marins. Residence route Frélu.
Constructions in 1930. Paul-Henri Apartments, 15, 17, 21 rue Paul-Henri. Gresham Apartments, 1222 to 1238 avenue Joffre.
Fonsim Apartments, route de Marigny. Garage Servoto, 336 Avenue du Roi Albert.
In 1929, we moved our office in 540 Avenue Joffre. Musée Heud at Avenue du Bail.
At the end of the 1920s, in the context of the political and financial crisis, it was evident that the situation in Shanghai would worsen. So we decided to extend our activities into French Indochina. This was when we met Arthur Kruze in Hanoi, where he was teaching architecture.
I was born in Roubaix in 1900. I did 3 years of military duty and went to the École des Beaux-Arts, where I graduated as an architect. I was the director of the architecture faculty of the School of Fine Arts of Indochina when I met Alexandre Léonard and Paul Veysseyre for the first time.
I always had, wherever I went in France, at least one close friend. Here in Shanghai, it was completely different. I missed home very much and was lonely, especially since Paul is an introvert, and it was difficult to get him to talk.
Elise could not stand the greedy French expat community and the lack of a culture-rich environment, so we separated in 1930.
Constructions in 1931.
Cercle Français, 57 Route Vallon.
Fonsim Apartments A, B and C at 50, 52 and 54 Route Cohen. Hospital. Résidence Sigaud, 63 Route Cohen.
Le Béarn at 475 Avenue Joffre, Huaihailu.
In 1931, we moved our offices at the 8th floor of the Béarn apartment building.
Constructions in 1932. École primaire chinoise, 416 Route Chapsal. 4 twin houses, 38 to 52 Route Edan.
Constructions in 1933. École municipale française, Route Rémy. Église Saint-Pierre at 223 Avenue du Bail. Fonsim Apartments D and E, 58, 60 and 62 Route Cohen.
Boutique Avenue Joffre.
In January 1932, I was appointed second lieutenant of the Auto-Mitrailleuse Company in the French Company of Volunteers. I met Suzanne in Paris. We married in October 1933. Soon after, we had Jean-Marie in 1934, Pierre in 1935, and Colette in 1936. Colette, the poor child, had a bad health, and we had to send her to France in 1937 for medical care.
I made my first trip to Shanghai in 1933, and I met Alexandre and Paul again. The following year, I joined their firm as a partner, and I played an active role in the design of Le Dauphiné, Maggie Apartments, and many other projects. Constructions in 1934. Laboratoire municipal at 197 route du Père Robert. École primaire La Grenée at 43 rue de la Grenée. Residence Guichy, 200 route Guichy. Chongwei Bank at 143 Avenue Edward VII, built for the head of the Green Gang Du Ye-chang. St. Columban's Mission Headquarters, 287 Route Maresca.
Eden Gardens, 32, 34, 36, Route Eden. Dauphiné Apartments, 394, Route Frelupt. Gascogne Apartments, 1202 Avenue Joffre. Maggie Apartment. Residence Cholot, 23 Route de Launay. Residence Shamoun, 228 Route de Hongjiao.
Poste de police Malais à rue du Consulat.
On July 14 of 1934, the local French newspaper, Le Journal de Shanghai, published a supplement featuring 60 buildings we designed, including a map of our realizations over the French concession and the LVK Firms Group photo.
Elizabeth and I married in Shanghai on July 16, 1934, having been together for more than 10 years. She died in December 1934, leaving me alone with my 8-year-old daughter. 2 years later, on December 9, 1936, I married Anna Ivovna Bovshi, who was born in Vilnius on August 16, 1905. My witnesses were my friends Marcel Verdier and Ernest Mathieu. Anna was a cabaret singer and dancer who later went on to run a cabaret called the Biana in the Hanray apartments.
Constructions in 1935.
Dispensary entrance, 197 Route du Père Robert.
Pavillon Saint-Vincent.
Pavillon de secours. Institution prophylactique. Nurses School. Pavillon des femmes. The French authorities of Shanghai asked us to work on a new consulate on the Bund and on a new administration building. We made some beautiful proposals, but the projects never came to fruition due to a lack of funding from the French government.
In 1937, when we got news that the war was coming, I wanted to relocate the family in a safe place. I thought about Singapore, and finally we set up a branch of the agency in Saigon with Jacques Joannon from the Beaux-Arts School and Truong Ngoc Phu, a Vietnamese architect. Moving to Indochina was a brilliant idea. My portfolio in Shanghai looked excellent, and in 1933 I had already built the residence of Emperor Bao Dai in Dalat. Later in 1937, I designed the home of the Governor General of Indochina. I have been very prolific in Saigon, with the National Navy Building, Boulevard Norodom, the Indochina breweries and chillers, Brasserie et Glacière de l'Indochine, the Cité Huy Bong Hoa, the Cité La Reynière, and many apartment buildings. Suzanne gave birth to 3 children in Saigon. Bernard in 1938, Guy in 1940, and Jacques in 1941. Unfortunately, we lost Guy when he was only 2 years old. In 1940, the family moved to Dalat, where I had a lot of contracts for the Bank of Indochina, or the Yosin School Dean's House, and over 50 private villas. I also worked on some religious buildings such as the Couvent du Domaine de Marie at Dalat in 1942. In June 1937, I became member of the French Architect Academy.
Constructions in 1939. Edinburgh House, 195 Rue Bourgeat.
Hanray Building at Avenue Joffre, named after the owners, a wealthy Sephardi Jewish couple, named Hannah and Ray Joseph.
In 1939, I sent my daughter to my parents. She traveled by train to France through Russia and Europe and went to study in a boarding school.
In 1939, I had to join the French army, and I resigned from the firm.
I remained alone in Shanghai. In 1941, I completed work on the Amiron apartments. The Amiron was a gift to my wife Anna and was meant to be a residence for artists and performers. There were movable partitions in the apartments for rehearsal and a 2-story penthouse for Anna and I.
By 1937, the business had severely slowed down in Shanghai, and by 1941 it entirely ceased with the Japanese invasion. This forced us to end our collaboration, and we eventually closed the firm a year later in 1942.
In 1942, I was appointed director of the School of Architecture of Dalat.
In 1943, the pro-German government of Vichy resigned its sovereignty over Tianjin, Hankou, Guangzhou and Shanghai, and then reclaimed it in 1945. Finally, in 1946, on February 28th, France definitively withdrew its administration over Shanghai. A few days later, on March 13th, I was found dead on the pavement in front of my apartment building, the Amiron 12, Route Cohen.
After the Japanese invasion of Indochina in March 1945, my family and I were captured by the Japanese, together with 600 French people living in Dalat, and we were detained in a workers' estate 6 kilometers from the city. Unlike many Japanese army officers in Indochina, Colonel Hachifuji wasn't a bad man, and we didn't suffer too much from this 1 year time as war prisoners. In 1945, Suzanne had another baby boy, Alain. The French army arrived in Dalat on January 24, 1946. At the end of 1946, Suzanne sailed to France with the younger boys and I took a flight with the 2 older ones. We stayed in Rennes, Brittany, where we had 3 other children, Claude in 1947, Nicole in 1948, and Danielle in 1951.
In 1950, I was appointed director of the School of Architecture of Saigon.
I went back to Saigon for work. I remained in Indochina until June 1951. The architecture office kept running in Saigon until 1956 with my business partner Marcel Guillet.
I returned to France in 1954 after the Genève Agreements, following the fall of Dien Bien Phu.
My family definitively settled in Tours. I remember my happy time in Shanghai. There, I had experienced the best life I could live.